Okay, hi guys. Today I'm going to go over Chapter 31 with you, the respiratory system. I'm sorry I don't have the PowerPoints. I actually left my jump drive at school and I don't have the PowerPoints actually on my computer, so I'm just going to use the PDFs that you guys have available to you on Blackboard. So sorry about that, but gotta work with what we got. Okay, so Chapter 31 is about the respiratory system. And so this includes your pulmonary system, your heart, the pulmonary circuit, where you're bringing blood to your lungs, and then also your lungs. That's the real big hitter kind of system that we have here, is the lungs that are exchanging gases with the external environment and then also with your blood. So as you guys might recall, we do something called aerobic respiration in order to produce ATP, and so that means we have to have oxygen in order to complete that. If you guys remember, oxygen is the last electron acceptor in the electron transport chain, and so that's why you have to have it in order to respire. So we inhale oxygen. The atmosphere is about 16% oxygen by volume, and we exhale CO2, which is a garbage molecule that your body makes as a byproduct of cellular respiration. So, sorry about that, I still have kind of a cold too, so I'm snuffly and coughing. Different organisms, any organism that requires oxygen for their cellular respiration is going to have to get it out of the medium in which they live, and so that can be different for different organisms. You guys are familiar with organisms that live in aquatic environments, organisms that live in terrestrial environments where there's air, and so the respiratory surfaces where those organisms are exchanging those gases with the atmosphere are going to change a little bit. So you guys can see on your PowerPoints, you've got a grasshopper here, you've got a fish here, and a lion. So lions have a mammalian system much in the same way, or very, 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 very similar, if not almost identical to the ones that humans have. So they have air sacs in their lungs that are just coated with all these little capillaries that you can see right there. Fish have gills, and so on the underside of that little gill flap right there that's called an operculum, they've got all these different little capillary beds that are exchanging gas with the water, and so water has to have dissolved oxygen in it. I know it seems kind of weird because water is made of H2O, and so there's lots of oxygen that's bound up in the water molecule itself. But in an H2O molecule, the O part of that is not bioavailable for pickup and use as gaseous oxygen. So that's why in your fish tanks you have bubblers, things like that, to keep the dissolved oxygen up. Things like Hydra, this little cnidarian little guy right here, they actually exchange gaseous material directly with the water column. They don't have a capillary bed. Their tissues just exchange directly with the water column. And then these little annelid worms do kind of the same thing. They just exchange with the environment and the soil. Okay, so all these respiratory surfaces are going to have some similarities. One of the biggest things here is that they have to have a large surface area. You have to get the blood supply, those little capillary beds, down to a very, very, very small size, so that way the oxygen and the CO2 can diffuse out very quickly, and the smaller that size is, the better. And so if you're breaking all of these veins and arteries and things like that down, you're going to need a really large surface area to put all of that volume. They also have to have contact with either air or water, and so that's the medium by which we're exchanging these gases. And then also those gases will exchange with the environment a lot more quickly and more efficiently if they're moist. And so inside of your lungs, there's a lot more humidity than there is on the outside of your body, and that's so that you can exchange those gases more easily. Alright, so we already kind of talked about this, like methods of gas exchange, and so some animals do that via gill slits, some of them do that with air sacs, some of them do that directly with the environment themselves. And so the thing here is that the tissues or the vasculature, the blood vessels, have to come into contact with that air or with that water. So arthropods, like this little grasshopper here, they have like little tiny itty bitty baby, basically windpipes that are called trachea. which are just little tiny internal tubes, and then gases can diffuse into the tissues themselves and to the cells, and then they can diffuse carbon dioxide out. Aquatic organisms, again, they use gills, and so they've got that really rich vasculature behind that gill flap right here, and this is called an opercula. That's why it's so red and pink on the inside there, is because there's lots of blood supply to exchange those gases with the environment. And then fishes like sharks and things like that use something called a countercurrent exchange, which makes the gills more efficient. So blood is going to flow against the current of the water, so that way you can maintain a concentration gradient between the blood and the water throughout the width of the gill. And so all that means is that we're going to flow water through there just against the current of the blood, so that way you're getting more exposure there. That's what that countercurrent means. So terrestrial organisms like us, mammals or vertebrates, they have lungs. And so lungs are just big balloons basically on the inside of the body that can fill with gas from the atmosphere, and then you can exchange the gases in your body with those that you've just inhaled from the atmosphere. So lungs can look very different depending on what kind of organism you're looking at, but they're basically like a big balloon with little tiny baby air sacs on the inside. So having lungs really does make living on land a little bit more efficient. They're internal, they stay moist, they have a large surface area because of all those little folds and all those little air sacs that are in there. If you were to take your lung out and iron it out, it would be like 11 square feet or something like that, is what I read in an anatomy book one time. So really, really, really large surface area. And that's good because we want to have as much opportunity for that gas to make contact with that surface to exchange as much carbon dioxide and oxygen as possible. So in birds and reptiles, it's going to look a little different. So birds have multi-sacs on here. They've got a trachea and they have like multiple little sacs on here. And so that